Hi. Uh, Today I'm going to review some gear. Um, you know, when it comes to buying a new camera, it's really for the regular person. We really don't have, the sky's the limit. Everybody, who has a job, who doesn't shoot pictures full time, buys a camera once every couple of years. And camera equipment is extremely expensive. And I recently came across something that was really, really good in terms of price. I've been shooting APS-C on Canon Rebel cameras for God knows how long, since the first Rebel that came out, and the problem is uh, APS-C size sensor was never really um, good enough for me in terms of low light, because I would assume that I'm like most hobbyist, most shooter, serious enthusiast, and I am a commercial artist, so I do sometimes you do use the camera for certain work like pamphlets and ads and stuff like that, and where I do use the camera to shoot both in video and photos. And I shot a couple of weddings as well. So I could say I'm either an amateur photographer or I'm an extreme enthusiast. So, but my budget is usually around $1,000 for a camera and a lens. Anything else that I would spend on a camera, my wife would kill me. I'm sure most mere mortals out there, like you guys, are as well. I mean, forget about looking at the latest Panasonic camera, the latest Sony A7 III, the latest mirrorless cameras, the latest Nikon D810 and so on. Those are really, 1,500 to $2,000 for a camera body is really more money than any regular person can afford. But there's two sleepers out there now that are really, really coming into the price range that us mere mortals can afford. That is just to say it right out is there are two cameras out there. One is the A7 original, and the other is the Canon 6D original. Now these two cameras are full frame, but now it's 2019, and the fact of the matter is, I don't care what anybody says, full frame is always going to be much better than APS-C crop sensor camera, which is basically your cheaper cameras that are under $1,000 are usually APS-C, which has a smaller sensor size than a full frame sensor size. And the full frame will give you a much pleasing picture, much better dynamic range, which is much better colors in the shadows and much better colors in the brights, as well as a very important thing is that most of your shootings, most of my shooting is done indoor. When do you use the cameras? When your kids have a birthday party, it's usually indoor. When your friends come over, it's usually indoor. Rarely do your friends come over and you sit in the backyard during the daytime, unless you're having a daytime barbecue. But even when I have barbecues, it's usually in the evening. Your kids having an award at school, your kids doing soccer, whatever is in the gymnasium at the school. I Unless you're a street shooter and you're a landscape, you love landscape. But if if the bulk of your work is done around the house, which is, I would guess, most family people would use a camera for, is to document their kids growing up and your kids running around doing sports and indoor birthday parties and having guests over in the house. A majority of that is indoor photos. And when it comes to indoor photos, APS-C just is terrible. As well as the cell phone nowadays has gotten almost pretty good, but still it doesn't compare to a full frame. So now in 2019, I used A7 original, a Sony A7 full frame, or a used Canon 6D is coming to be around $800 used. And this is a really, really good deal because now at $800 is what most APS-C camera are costing us, brand new. Like let's say for example a Canon T7i or something. So really now full frame around 800, an APS-C new around 800. So, the dilemma is, should I get a APS-C or should I get full frame? And the answer for me, by the most part, is, hey, look, man, full frame is always going to be better most of the time. So we're looking at 800. So I was going through the classified ads, and lo and behold, I found really a really, really good deal. I found a Canon 60 for $500. Now, this is amazing. $500. Nowadays, you can't even buy a good lens for $500. So there is a catch. This camera is completely used. It's advertised as fully functional and nothing's wrong with the camera, but it was completely scratched up. This camera was used and used and used. Never been dropped. It doesn't look like it, but there are scratches all over the camera. Looks like somebody jammed the lens into it so quickly that all the edge of the paints come off. At the bottom of the camera, all the paint has come entirely off. The top of the camera, the plastic area, it's been so worn that the black is not even black color anymore. And I took a chance. I inspected the camera and everything seems to work fine. So I bought it. $500 for a Canon 60 full frame camera. And this is the camera right here, minus the pancake lens. I took a piece of, I took a brush and some paint, and I actually painted it all around here so that the scratches were better looking than before. All around here there was scratches. And then at the bottom, I repainted the entire bottom part of this was all gray plastic color because it's been so well used. I had no idea what kind of shutter speed this camera had. Neither did the seller. We didn't have the proper tools to check the shutter count. I took a chance. When I went home, I loaded up a Magic Lantern, and in Magic Lantern, in the SD card. So afterwards, within Magic Lantern, you can see how many shutter count there was, actuations. It turned out to be about 130,000 actuations. So that is quite a lot, but I'm so glad that I bought it for such a good deal for $500. It was really worth a risk because anywhere I use this camera, because I have an old T5i that I use that is being filmed right now, and it just, the T5i being a crop sensor camera, just doesn't compare at all. It doesn't compare in dynamic range. It doesn't compare in low light, especially low light. When you put on a 50 on a full frame, it's a 50. It's very versatile focal range, and those are the cameras that that are easily accessible, that you can find used for a cheap price. But when you put on a 50 on a crop sensor camera, it really is very zoomed in. Especially if you don't live in a large house with a big room, you back up, and people say, you could use a 50, but if you're in a small room, your 50 is only going to get like, a person's face here. And then you try to back up and there's no room to back up. So they tell you, you need to get a 35 or a 28 millimeter, but those are hard to find and they are more expensive. And obviously, if you want to go wide angle, you can only go so wide on an APS-C, and as well as f-stops. You can, uh, an f1.4 on a full frame is going to look really good, but an f1.4 on a crop sensor camera isn't going to look as good. And you can't really, go lower. Like, let's say if you get a 1.2, an f1.2 lens on a full frame, it's going to look beautiful. The background blur is going to be, buttery soft. And you can't do that. You can't go on f0.8 or 0.6. They don't make that. So, I mean, a full frame is really the answer to my dreams. With the crop sensor camera, with the T5i, anything 3200 ISO would be super grainy. Even at 1600, it would be still not very good, to say the least. Anything under 1000 would be acceptable in terms of video and photo shooting. Yes, in photo shooting, you can get away with a little bit more because you can have longer exposures. But in video, you can't. So I tell you, this is really a gem, the Canon 6D, because I already have Canon lenses. I almost gone to a Sony. I almost bought a A7S, although it was still, $800-900. A well-used A7S is still at around 900, no lens. Whereas this one, it was $500, and I have all of my old Canon lens, like this pancake, that fit on it, and this is a beautiful camera. I mean, this in low light is the same low light capabilities as a 5D Mark IV, 5D Mark III, or a 6D Mark II. The only thing is that this has only one cross type focusing point, so it's not really good for sports, and it doesn't have any continuous autofocus in video. So obviously in video, it would have to be either static shots and not moving subjects, or you're gonna have to pull focus yourself. But you know what? I always have this old APS-C camera, my T5i, that has some kind of lower version of continuous autofocus with the STM lens. And if worst comes to worst, I can always pull out my cell phone, which does have 4K. And out of my cell phone, 4K videos is actually super, super sharp. So I really, yeah, if the price was, no object, then yeah, sure, I can, start upgrading to A7 III. That would be great. Obviously, A7 III is right now in 2019 is one of the best cameras out there. But well, I don't have to live, and I don't want to live on the sidewalk. So that's out of the question for a hobbyist. So really, if you're really looking for a camera, and you got about $500 to $800 to spend, seriously, you forget about APS-C size sensors. Go with the used full frame. I guarantee you, a used full frame such as the A7 original or the Canon 6D, these two cameras are a gem. You would be so happy with it. Now that I got this camera, I was saying to myself, I should have not bought, because in the time that I bought 3 Rebel cameras, I gotta, just bite the bullet and bought myself a full frame from the beginning, because really I was not happy with the crop sensor camera in the low light situation, which is 90% of all my shooting. So in 2019, for photography wise, Canon 60, it's still really amazing. It's really a sleeper. And by that, I hope you enjoy this boring video, and have a nice day. Thanks. Bye.